Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tips, tools, and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. Today I have guest Carrie Schmidt. Carrie is a transformational life and business coach and founder and CEO of Infinite SOULutions. She is the author of her first book, Behind the Screen: Uncover the Truth, Connect to Your Power, Passion, Purpose. After achieving top-level leadership roles and a six-figure salary, Carrie still felt a deep longing for something greater. So she embarked on a spiritual journey of personal discovery and development that led her to research the fundamentals of psychology, neuroscience, and quantum physics. Utilizing her knowledge, Carrie's vision is to reach, treat, teach, and transform more than 1 million lives by helping raise human consciousness and mental health awareness. Welcome, Carrie. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Hey, Tanya, thanks so much. I'm so excited for this conversation.
So we're going to have some fun because we're going to talk about cleaning behind the screen, releasing yourself from unconscious programs. And we're going to talk about what the screen is later on in the show. And so, Carrie, there's no doubt about it that we are living in challenging times, right? And it's easy for us to get lost in the societal illusions of perfection and separation and instant gratification, like things like Amazon, right? And so our world definitely gives value and attention to physical appearance, material things, hierarchy, and status. And, our search for more continues on, and it kind of helps our ego to thrive, right? But it ultimately leaves us feeling very unfulfilled and dissatisfied. And so we often will escape into things like food or alcohol, drugs, shopping. I know that was one for me, back in the day. And even other people, right, to distract us from, from ourselves or from our soul. And so, Carrie, why do you think as a society, we are so disconnected from our authentic self, and how do we realign with that?
Yeah, that's a powerful
That's a very powerful question. Yes.
And so needed. I think that we need to talk about this. And that's why I wrote the book, because I think we need to talk about these challenges, because we watch TV, you have models that are advertising, you have to have this perfect white smile, you have to be skinny, or you have to look a certain way, you have to dress a certain way. And the effects are coming on to our children, right? And our children are picking up this conditioned way of thinking about themselves, about the world around them. And really, it's an illusion. It is, this instant gratification, this passion for riches. It's all an illusion. And at the end of the day, if you're younger and you're seeking, I want to be rich. That's what everybody says. I have a 16-year-old son. What do you want to do? I want to be rich. Okay, well, that's not what it's all, made up to be, because once you get to that point, you can still be very unfulfilled and feel empty. And so I think what we need to talk about is what really matters in life. At the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, are you going to remember, all the things that you bought on Amazon? Are you going to remember, all the chips you ate?
Probably not, but they'll send us an email to let us know what we purchased, right?
Right. It's like we're just getting lost in the need and the greed for other things, and we're losing sight of the power that we hold. And I think that's where we need to get real and get raw about, we have a power breathing us that is greater than anything on the outside of us, but yet we feel unfulfilled, or we feel this void inside, and we go seeking on the outside for something to fulfill us. And that is not the right way to go about, seeking that fulfillment. So I think it's important to talk about these things and kind of let down the veil that it's not all about the money or, the escape into drugs or alcohol that's causing more pain and more issues in our world today. So I think we need to talk about how can we really connect with our true, authentic selves and get real with ourselves. unfortunately, most people have childhood trauma or some type of conditioning from their childhood that impacts their mind today on a daily basis. As adults, there's a lot of adults masquerading around as children.
Oh, yeah.
In our own minds, we're stuck in this negative thought loop, or we're stuck in these unconscious behavior patterns that keep repeating themselves. And so you'll find people who are stuck in that cycle will continue to self-sabotage themselves through that, online shopping. I'm bored, so I'm going to shop, but then it's going to put me into, debt. Or I don't feel loved, so I'm going to go sleep around with other people because that's going to make me feel more fulfilled. But that's not really the answer. So
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
empty.
important.
That feels very empty. Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we need to let down the veil and really talk about these things, that is not the way to go. And if you're feeling that way, there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of support, and it takes the willingness to want to change.
It really does. And, especially during these times, right? This day and age, a lot of people are looking for ways to escape the current situation or the current reality or their current situation, right? Because we all have a choice to co-create our own reality, and I'm sure if you, lined up 10 different people and asked them what their experience was during the pandemic, they'd all be very different. I know mine would be very different, right? So I did a lot of traveling during that time and I enjoyed myself. And so, there's a a deep meaning to what you're sharing, because many of us have been programmed to be on autopilot. And I know there was a time when I had to take Amazon app off my phone because I was on autopilot. It was a point in my life where it was almost like I was just bored. And I think, I wasn't facing the real issues in my work environment or in my relationship or whatever I was dealing with at that time. And so for me, retail was a nice little outlet for me to go to. It gave me that little instant gratification at the time. But then later on, I was like, did I even really need, this item? And so I think it is very important that we have this discussion today because, a program is like a series of behavioral patterns that we have, right? So many of us are running on these programs like you talked about, and many of these programs were created at a very young age. Oftentimes between the time we're born to roughly age 6 or 7, we've already created these programs when we're in that theta brainwave state, that very observatory state. And so, we get stuck into this matrix, so to speak, right? And our life, we just think that we can only see within this box in our life. And, many of us, at least a lot of my guests are beginning to break through those limited beliefs, and we're beginning to break through those habits or shine light on those habits that may not be benefiting us. And so, these are things that could have been formed from our past experiences. And as a result, it begins to shape our future experiences until we bring it to the conscious mind. And so, Carrie, how do we recognize if and when we are stuck in a program that is not benefiting us anymore?
Yeah. So if you continue to attract the same type of person, say you come into this particular relationship and you're finding yourself always, the relationship ends badly. That's an example of something that, okay, think about your current results in life and where might you not be happy with the results in your relationships, in your health, in your career. This can impact all of those. So if you're having negative results, you need to stop, pause, and start to observe what are some of those repetitive patterns. And this in my book is where I talk about our life timeline. And so today is the present day. So I can look at my results in my life and identify, where am I not happy with the results? Let's just say in my relationships. Okay, great. Now I want to get more conscious and curious about past relationships and start to observe the patterns of behavior from yourself, not just the other person. Because what we do is we tend to say, oh, it's all their fault. When that finger that you're pointing, remember, you have 3
Turn
pointing
around.
back at you. So, and I did this. I'm very kind of self-exploratory. I'm trying to always improve myself. So, in my own relationship history, it was kind of like I noticed, right? Because you have to start to notice what you're noticing about your thought patterns, about your behavior patterns, and about your emotions. Because most often our emotions are driving our reactions.
Mhm.
And so that is not a healthy way to live. You want to be able to respond versus react. And responding, you have more of a conscious awareness to what you're doing. So start to look at your results and observe where they might be negative, but start to look at the patterns of behavior. And if you notice any consistent patterns, now from yourself, again, we need to self-reflect because we can't change anyone else. The only thing we can do is change ourselves. And when we change ourselves, the world around us obviously changes because our own awareness has changed. So start to notice those patterns of behavior. And step one of my 7-step system that I developed in my book is to tag it. So in my relationships, I got my heart broken a long time ago. So anytime I dated somebody, the first red flag, I'm done. Like, I'm walking away from this. I don't care how great you might be, whatever, I'm out because I am guarded. My heart was guarded. And so I noticed that I had this consistent pattern where I'm just telling guys, lose my phone number, well, I was single for 8 years.
That fight, flight, or freeze response. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm a runner. I'm just like, this isn't going to work out. Boom, stop, move on. But then again, I had to get conscious and curious and say, okay, Carrie, what are you doing here? Because you're either going to end up growing old on your own, or you're going to have to start to work through some of these, what I call trauma responses, because that person is not the same person that caused the trauma to myself way younger. I'm just reacting as if they're going to hurt me like the other person hurt me, right? And so when you start to notice this, then you can start to observe, okay, this is how I'm reacting, but you have to get curious. Why am I reacting this way? So step 2 is to remember it, to go back and remember, when was the first time that I experienced something like this? And what were the results of that? So that you can start to identify the program, right? Because our subconscious mind operates 95% of the time our lives. And most of it is this unconscious reactions. So it's like we're running on the hamster wheel, whether you're recreating the same problems in your career, your boss, says something to you, you get pissed off, you go find another job or you quit. Right? Those are some types
and then you
of
find a very similar job, just at a different company, right?
Yes. And then you might have a boss or a coworker that pisses you off again, and you do it again. And it's like, okay, when is this pattern going to stop? It's going to stop when you start to become conscious of the way that you're reacting, and you gain more control in the present moment through your level of awareness, where you can pause and you can choose a different way to act in that particular situation. And that is so powerful.
Really is. It's like, the way I explain it is, you have a record player and you continue to play the record, but then it'll skip. And most people will pick up that needle and move it and continue on, that particular record player. Well, we need to take the whole record off and start with a new record, right? And that's what recognizing that program, because oftentimes we'll continue to allow the skip to take place and we'll just let it go. Oh, now the music's back on again. And then it'll skip again. Oh, darn it. Versus just completely scratching that record and literally starting from scratch and saying, okay, listen, I am recognizing this pattern within my relationships, within my health, within whatever it may be, and consciously stopping and saying, wow, it's like literally a review. You're going to review that and say, this has been a pattern in my relationships, which is what it sounds like you have done, where you've stopped and said, okay, I was hurt when I was 15 years old, which is a, very kind of difficult time in many of our lives, right? And that's when we really fall in love, is when we're young. And then we really get hurt when we're young. And then we, unfortunately, many of us, me very similar to you, would carry on that pain and that hurt. And then you get up to a certain point in the relationship, and then you're like, nope, we're not going any further, and we're going to back off. And that will continue until you get to a point that you consciously bring that to the surface and say, all right, I think I'm going to move forward in this and see what happens, this time. And just really changing your neural pathways too. I mean, it's just really, it's doing more than just changing the program. It's doing things on a physical, mental, energetic, and even spiritual level for that matter. Absolutely. So it's this very multi-dimensional shift that takes place when we deprogram. And so, when we're looking at those self-sabotaging habits and those patterns, is there a particular technique or tool that you would suggest for people to kind of catch themselves in that pattern? Maybe they're on autopilot and they aren't even really recognizing that this pattern is taking place.
Yeah, so it's really just taking a step back and becoming an observer of your way of thinking. I like to say, notice what you're noticing. Start to observe your thoughts throughout the day, and start to observe when you're having negative thoughts and what's the trigger that is triggering you to think that negative thought, whether it be about yourself or someone else. We get stuck in these negative thought patterns that just like continue, and it can take over. Right? For some people, myself, it can take over your mind, where then you just get into this like doom and gloom place, right? So it's really just taking a step back, being an observer of yourself, and take a week, just say, this week, I'm going to observe my way of thinking. Take a journal and just write down anytime you have negative thoughts. Identify what is the environment or the person or the situation you're in that caused that negative way of thinking. So then you can kind of just observe yourself and apply this system of what I call the 7-step life timeline system of transformation is to tag those unconscious behavior patterns, some of those negative thoughts, and then go back and remember, where did I pick up this programming? Because again, it's like, don't be so hard on yourself. People are like, I'm crazy, or, I'm not worthy. No one loves me. All of these thinking mechanisms that are unhealthy. But if you look at it and you look at the neuroscience of the way that our brain is wired, and I talk a lot about this in chapter 2 of the book, because I think it's important to understand the subconscious. The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what's fake. It doesn't know the difference. So if you're saying in your mind, no one loves me, no one loves me, no one loves me, you believe that. You keep firing and wiring that same neural pathway. So looking back and identifying what are some of those ways of thinking, and then notice them when they come up so that you can repattern your thoughts.
Absolutely. And, I'll share a funny story of that. I love that topic, because that the subconscious doesn't know what's real and what's not. So this was about 6 or 7 years ago. I was in a very stressful job. And so after work, I would record all Hallmark movies, and that's all that I would watch after work. And I was single at this time. And literally every night I would watch a Hallmark movie. And I remember at the time, I was emotional watching these. I was crying. I was like, why can't I find love like someone does on a Hallmark movie? And so what I began to recognize is I started to shift my thoughts from why can't I to I can do this. I can attract someone similar to this. I can attract someone from my hometown that I didn't know. I can attract someone who's a doctor that just shows up at my door, because I was working in healthcare at this time. And the funny thing is, I probably started this around Thanksgiving, because that's when they started rolling out. And by January, no joke, I had attracted someone from my hometown who was the brother of someone that I didn't even know at the time. And he had his doctorate. It wasn't in healthcare. It was in horticulture and whatnot, but he has a PhD in that. And he ended up, he was just, it was like a Hallmark movie. Like, I look at that relationship and every single thing about it was a Hallmark movie. And even my friends would comment like, that guy treats you like you're in a Hallmark movie. And so I had legit manifested someone into my life based off of what I was watching on television, because my subconscious didn't know the difference between watching a Hallmark movie versus me living in a Hallmark movie. And the irony of it is actually moved out to the Pacific Northwest to a town that literally looks like a Hallmark movie. And so that all of this started to transpire. And I like to share that story because it, like you had touched on, the subconscious does not know the difference between what's actively going on in your reality or what you're physically watching or speaking or participating in, whatever it may be. And
Yes.
so it will play itself out based off of that vibration or that frequency that you are bringing in that moment. And so, Carrie, this is a good segue into your book. I want to talk about your first book and how exciting that is. I'm actually writing my first book too, and I know how fun that is to be able to express yourself and to get yourself out there. And so your book, Behind the Screen, let's talk about what the screen is.
The screen is your lens of life. However you view life, whether it be, relationships, again, career, health, other people, and how you view yourself will basically determine your reality. So what we believe becomes manifest in our lives. So sometimes we have to get behind the screen. I call it the veil between our conscious and subconscious minds. So we have to go into our subconscious and understand where there's programming that isn't serving us. Where are there these repetitive thoughts, or where's the trauma? Where's the hurt? Where's the pain that caused you to build these defense mechanisms that are there to protect you, but as you grow up and into your adulthood, they're no longer protecting you. They're holding you back from living that happy, healthy, fulfilled life. And so it's really getting back into going into your childhood and identifying what is the root cause of some of these issues that are inhibiting my results in life now. And so for me, my parents got divorced when I was younger, so I felt this instability. I never really had anyone around. I, kind of grew up alone. My older sister kind of raised me a lot. And then I got into a relationship that was not healthy. My family disowned me. I was in an interracial relationship for 9 years. He cheated on me. My family left me, and it was just like,
Abandonment. Yeah.
So in writing this book, I share a lot of real raw truths of what I went through as a teenager, my way of thinking at that point in time. And I paint a picture of what I believed life to be at that point in time. But then I also tell the story of how I look at life differently as I've learned about our subconscious programming, and I've learned to overcome and really override some of those thought patterns, defense mechanisms that were holding me back. And I have a similar story. I told you I would tell people to lose my number in terms of a relationship. And then I was single for 8 years. I have a son who I've raised on my own. He's 16. So I talk about single parenting, a lot of just difficult times in my story. I use my stories to teach this system of transformation of how you can tag those unconscious behavior patterns, go back in your life timeline and identify where was the inception point of this negative programming in my mind, and then how often did it play out throughout my life timeline, hence repeating the same unhealthy relationships and things like that, not feeling worthy, not feeling secure, not feeling loved. So I use my stories to teach this system of transformation. But I got to a point where I learned about the law of attraction and the law of resonance and how to manifest things. And I started putting it to work, and I've manifested everything that I've dreamed of over the past 5 years, including meeting my soulmate. And so I said the same thing. I would write down, this is the man, when he kisses me, it sends electricity through every ounce of my body. You have to be very specific with what you want.
And you've got to feel into it. Yeah.
You have to feel it, but you have to believe it's now. You have to put on the energy of being in love and, watching my boyfriend and my son playing together and developing this relationship. And I would replay it. I would speak it out loud. I would go to bed, envisioning this life. And he's real. So So I manifested the love of my life and my soulmate. We've been together now for 3 years, and it's been incredible because in my vision of him, I said his hands. I mentioned how his hands and were nice and big, and when they touch the spine of my back, and he has these great big hands, and I just love them. And I'm like, oh, I should do that. And there were just so many details that I visioned that are like real. So it's like you can't fake that, you can't make this stuff up, but you never know how the universe will deliver what it is you want. But you have to shift your mindset from the past and from repeating those same thought patterns to reprogram your mind in order to manifest whatever it is you want, that healthy lifestyle or the love of your life or, the best career. You have to believe it, and you have to put on the energy of that situation as if it's happening right now. And it is so powerful. And that's what I wanted to share in my story. There's different perspectives, right? And your perspective shapes your reality. So sometimes we have to flip the screen. Sometimes we have to look at it from the other side and, maybe someone else's perspective, or there might be a silver lining that I didn't see in that trauma, right? Because we can't understand why we go through certain seasons. But I think that there's always a reason behind what is happening. And sometimes we have to look for that silver lining and say, wow, that did happen. I understand it was terrible, but look at what happened because of this, or look at how I've been able to grow and evolve because of that situation. And you want to hang on to the positive aspects of that.
Yeah, because sometimes those can be those tower moments. And I've had that experience where I start really cleaning behind the screen, so to speak. And then I notice all these things start to crumble in front of me, but I'm observing them. I'm not participating in them. I'm kind of just watching it kind of, Rome crumble before my eyes, but as a third party observer. And then I begin to watch new things start to build and be created in my new reality or in my new timeline, or, so I know now based off of learning about quantum leaping and timeline shifting and, those types of concepts that, those times when you do think, oh man, everything is kind of falling apart. That's actually a really good sign that things are falling apart, because that the old program is starting to fall apart because you are making space, creating new energy for this new program to come into its place. So you may notice that. And it was funny because when I did your bio, one of my mantras that I've been saying for the past 2 weeks is I want to inspire 1 million people from all over the world. And your bio said 1 million lives by raising. And I thought, okay, that's a sign that my manifestation is coming into my reality, because I'm noticing key terminology, or I'm noticing certain concepts that are coming in, or people are making similar comments to things that I am speaking out into existence. And it's really fun when you start to get behind the screen and really dive into those programs, because it's exciting to see the new programs start to attract and start to come into play. And so, Carrie, have you experienced that before, where you start to reprogram yourself and then you recognize, wow, I can actually see my new program coming into play?
Yes. And it continues to happen, because I'm the type of person, like, I want results now. And if I'm not getting the results, I get like, oh man, even though I know that's not the right way to be, but I still have people will reach out to me and say, yeah, I mentioned your name to my boss for this training. And it's like the seeds have been planted, and you might not see, the fruit of those seeds right away, but it's coming and in time. So I think we need to be patient. I think we need to wait and allow the soil, which is our mind, right? Allow the soil to be fertilized. You have to weed the weeds out of your subconscious mind. You have to plant those new seeds, and then you have to give love. self-love. You have to give yourself time. You have to give yourself the sunlight, to let those seeds
Nurture. Mm-hmm.
blossom into the fruit that you're looking for. And it takes time. And one thing I do want to mention, because we're talking about quantum leaping, quantum physics, manifestation, the law of attraction. And I hear people say, oh, that's just woo-woo. That doesn't work. And that was the main reason for why I wanted to write the book, because I researched so much into these topics, the science behind, the law of attraction, the law of resonance, manifestation. And science backs every bit of what we're talking about. And I like to say it's almost like the science behind spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever religion you believe in, whatever higher power, listen, we are all connected. And through this powerful brain, heart, we have
Mm-hmm.
all this going on within us. We're equipped with everything we need. And I think sometimes we need to look at ego and spirit. So there's another lens of life, right? So you can look at life through your spiritual lens, where you're believing, you're taking leaps, you're stepping outside of your comfort zone in the effort of growth by having faith. Or you can look at life through the egoic perspective, where you're clouded by the fear, doubt, or worry about what other people think, the fear of failing. And so you're not taking action. You're not going and trying new things in the effort of growth. And so it really all depends upon your perspective. And it's way better to go through the spiritual lens of life versus the egoic lens. But sometimes we need to recognize when it's our ego, when it's these negative thought patterns or these reoccurring patterns of behavior, and take a step back and really connect back to your spiritual self and look at life through that lens of faith and love and compassion and kindness. So it's a lot, but if I could testify to tell you this stuff works if you work it. And it's not always easy. And that's why, looking for help from a therapist or a coach or, whatever it might be, it's not always easy to break through patterns on your own, but there is support out there to help you see the situation from a different perspective.
Yeah, because sometimes it's difficult for you to see it. And I've had that experience, even when I'm like you, I'm quite experienced in this. Like, I've been doing this for many years now, but there are times when I am not seeing the pattern. And then I talk to someone else and they immediately pick up on the pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? But then once I'm aware of it, now I can see it. And then it just sticks out, for me. And so, you had talked about trust, and I heard someone say, trust the process while the processing is taking place. So kind of like, when you do an upgrade on your phone or on your computer and you see that little line that it's processing 20, 30, 40, 50%, but you don't see the full upgrade yet. You don't see where it's been completed. That's when you need to trust the process, because I think in that manifesting time, once you've put it out there and then you're waiting for that sign or that result to come through, that's when it's like the meat of it is like, okay, now I'm just going to trust that everything is in alignment, and I am going to be surprised at how it shows up in my life, and I'm going to be eager to see it, and I'm going to be excited. And so that's where I think most of us will have that self-doubt, or they'll walk away from things, or they'll say, oh, just screw it, or, whatever. But that's when the trust comes in. And that's where that spirituality and ego point comes in, because, we have to have that contrast, right? We wouldn't know what the spirit feels if we don't know what the ego feels like, right? We don't know what love would feel like if we didn't really know what hate or being unloved felt like, right? So we've got to have that contrast or that duality there in order to even kind of have that GPS system for our emotions and our feelings. And so, Carrie, when you talk about cleaning behind the screen, is there a tool or a technique that you could share, for people to get back in there and, do some cleaning?
Yeah, there's a thing called the Silva method. And when you notice yourself speaking negatively, like I'll say, oh, I'm such a dumb and then I'll notice I say that and I say, okay, cancel, cancel. I am very
I
smart.
love
I am
cancel.
intelligent.
Yes.
Right. And so anytime, and that's one technique, and this is just a repatterning. So you're telling yourself, cancel that thought and replace it with an empowering, more positive thought that's going to fulfill you, because you're not a dummy. You're very smart. You don't need to call yourself names, but these are things that I've implemented in my own life to be able to improve my results. And, journaling, a lot of times just getting stuff out, talking with somebody, getting it out, and then noticing those patterns and then starting to become aware in the moment. Every present moment is your opportunity to change, because the past is gone. The present, or the future isn't here yet. The only thing we have is right now. And it's your level of awareness in this present moment that will determine the difference between how your future looks or not.
Absolutely. And, it's funny you brought that up, because I was having this conversation with my dad about reprogramming your thoughts, and I had taught him the cancel technique. And I said, listen, Dad, write down your thoughts on a daily basis. And he goes, okay. And, well, then he calls me the next day and says, I have a lot of negative thoughts that I didn't even really recognize that I had. And he said, I often say I am an idiot. And I said, okay, well, where do you think that came from? And he says, your grandmother used to call me that. Like if I do something wrong, she'd call me an idiot when I was a child. And so he actually picked up that, and I don't think my grandma was doing it out of ill. I think that's
Right.
just how she was, expressing herself. But he said, gosh, that goes all the way back to like when I was 4 years old. And I said, all right, well, how can we reprogram that? And so now when he does it, he goes on walks alone and he tells himself, I am awesome. I am worthy. I am fantastic. Whatever. He's reprogramming that while he takes his 30-minute walk every day. And he's beginning to notice even my mom said, wow, his self-confidence has gotten better, and things like that. So it was funny that you mentioned that, because, that is such a simple technique. And I didn't realize it came from the Silva method. I had actually learned it through my EFT tapping courses.
Okay.
And so that's such an easy method that we can use to bring awareness to what our subconscious mind is kind of filling our conscious mind with on a daily basis. And so, Carrie, is there anything else that you'd like to share? This has been a really powerful conversation today.
Absolutely. So one other thing is to pose a question before bed. So your subconscious doesn't sleep. In fact, it's more powerful when you are sleeping. So I learned this from a Mind Valley event I went to a while ago, is to pose a question to the universe, but start with this: why am I so lucky to have manifested an interview with Oprah Winfrey in her Maui garden? Right. And so that's my dream. So if I pose that question, or you can say, why am I so lucky to have $1 million in my bank account? Now, your well, whatever, might not believe it, but if you just say that, in fact, your subconscious doesn't know, like I said, it doesn't know the difference between reality and not reality. So when you say, why am I so lucky to have $1 million in my bank account? Your subconscious can't challenge that, but it's planting a seed through your reticular activating system, which is going to pick up on those things in your awareness during the day. So like you said, the 1 million lives, that is because you've planted a seed. It's in your awareness. So anything that is related to that, you're going to, vibe to or pay attention to more of. And so it's just so powerful. But we have so much available to us and in us that if we just, are willing to take that chance, just try it out. Try one of these techniques that we mentioned today, or speak to somebody, a life coach, or, anyone who might have some additional tools that they can teach you. You just don't know where it can take your life. You just don't know. So why not try?
Absolutely.
Give the universe an opportunity to give you that solution.
Absolutely. And I call all these training wheels, because once our subconscious gets used to them, gets used to these affirmations, gets used to our way of being, we don't have to do them anymore. They just naturally run on autopilot, like your negative thoughts may be running now, right? So it's just, we're reprogramming that. And it's funny you brought up the $1 million, because that's a part of my mantra too, is making $1 million, inspiring 1 million people all over the world. So here, I already can see that the universe is like, here you go. You're aligning with this. You're bringing it into your reality. And, it's funny you say Oprah, because I was like, how would it feel for me to have Deepak, Chopra on my podcast? How would it feel to have some of these amazing people, on my show?
There's your tonight when you go to bed, say, why am I so lucky to have interviewed Deepak Chopra on my podcast?
Exactly. And so
then I can't wait to see it happen.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, I'm going to say that tonight before I go to bed. And so, the power of, programming and doing it right before bed and right when we wake up is so powerful, because we're in that theta brainwave state. And so if you're having a hard time reprogramming your thoughts, try it at those moments, because those moments you're much more permeable to the energy. And so, Carrie, how can people learn more about your services? What services do you provide? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's carrie-schmidt.com. I have 12-week life coaching programs. I have my best program is called the Dream Builder program, that takes you from where you are to where you want to be just a lot faster. And it has a spiritual modality to it. It's really awesome. I do business consulting. So my background is in the manufacturing industry. So I do a lot of business consulting and training, and you can find my book on Amazon. Again, it's called Behind the Screen. If you do get the book, I'd be honored if you leave a review, because those reviews are golden tickets for authors.
They are. So why am I so lucky to get all these reviews on my book? That's what you have to say.
Right. Why am I so lucky to have 100 reviews already on Amazon?
Well, great. Well, Carrie, this was a really fun conversation. And, thank you so much for the energy that you're bringing in. Thank you for the knowledge and for the wisdom and for sharing your journey in life. And I look forward to, I'm going to get your book, and I look forward to reading it, and I will leave you a review. And so thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of your unique wisdom. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And you're amazing, Tanya. So thank you for just providing a platform with so much great energy and wisdom. Thank you.
You deserve to navigate your life in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.theexistentialempath.com.